Let's talk about how this goes out. It's exactly as we theorized, but what I want here is to bring this Xatu as close to this red buff as I possibly can, clear that Xatu after the 9 minutes 40, so we can take this here, right? We get some value there, we pick up 1 kill. Okay, so as you can see, we rotate through, it's about the 8 minute 50 mark, and we are now in the bottom lane, but we end up getting the big B, and then we're doing a lot of damage to the enemy bottom laners. We end up getting a kill, and we're able to get our 10 points score in here. I'm going to show you how to gank both the top lane and the bottom lane by the first Bs. To do this, you need to have a level 4 power spike Pokemon. If you use something with a later power spike, like a Tyranitar, for example, or a Dragonite, then this Pokemon generally needs level 5 when it goes to the lane. So you need to do this with a Pokemon that has a level 4 power spike. So good examples of that would be a Sylveon or a Leafeon, one of the Eevees, for example. This is how you want to do it. You take this Xatu at 9 minutes 45, and you need to wait until that 9 minute 45 mark. You take that off the map, you rotate through to your red buff, then you take this red buff as soon as you can, and by that time you are level 4. Things are going fantastic. Now, generally at this point in the game, it is about the 9 minute 38 mark, roughly, I don't know, as an estimation. So generally Pokemon like to stack in the top lane, and this is where the value can come in. The enemy player, let's call him Blaziken, will generally be trying to stack at this stage and take this farm on this side of the map. The Blaziken will probably get one of these and then get another stack, so he'll be 2 stacks in. But this value here is you've taken the red buff, you've taken the Xatu, and now you can help this lane win early, right? You can come top, you can do some pretty cool things with your team up here. You can try and get KO number 1, right? You want to try and take out that Blaziken and then do a little bit of further pushing in this lane. You might get a score and then back out, take any of their farm very quickly that's up on this side, so your top lane gets ahead, right? Now generally by that time it might be 9 minutes 10. At that time you can either, and this is where the game comes in a little bit, I guess there's complex rotations at this point. This blue buff is still up. You can rotate down, take this blue buff, and then get to this bottom lane by the 8 minute 50 mark, and then you have ganked both the top and the bottom lane, right? That is something I'd suggest you do in solo queue with these level 4 power spike jungling Pokemon. This is how you want to be clearing those rotations, right? The other option is you stay up here, right? There's a blue buff here. The other option is your bottom lane defender stays bottom, and what your bottom lane attacker will do is at that 9-10 mark, he'll take this, and then you've got 4 people in the already winning top lane, right? What do we notice about this situation? The Baltoys we don't necessarily care about. They're just going to sit there in terms of our first rotation. We can clear them later on, but we're really not too fussed about these Baltoys here, right? This is fun that we haven't taken, but the trade-off is having a winning lane here and a potentially winning lane there if you're doing the 3v2 in that bottom lane. That's the theory on how it works. Let's talk about how this goes out. It's exactly as we theorized, right? Here we are on the Leafeon, and we're going to jump over this wall, right? You keep bringing this Xatu forward, and notice I don't want to kill it until 9 minutes 48, but I want to have maximal distance coming out here. So but what I want here is to bring this Xatu as close to this red buff as I possibly can, such that I can continue to run to this red buff and clear it as quickly as I can. That's essentially what I'm going for, right? So I quick attack through. I probably could have done that a little bit better, but we kind of get the general idea is that here we are now at this red buff, and you clear that Xatu after the 9 minutes 40. So we can take this, and as you can see, right at about, the 9 minute 35 mark, here we are as a Leafeon. And let's have a look at what's happening top. We've got 2 people pushing for scores. Meanwhile, our own dude is here, and their jungler is still kind of clearing their middle area. Meanwhile, we're going even down in the bottom lane. So this is good, right? There's a lot of value to be had there. But we're doing this exact rotation. We're rotating into the top lane, and we're going to try and get some value onto the enemy team and make sure our top lane is winning. Right now, at this particular point, I've kind of panned over the map, and I want to catch them off guard here. So I get that piece of farm, and then I get electro-webbed, which is totally fine. And I'm kind of hoping that my team just collapses on these guys here, right? We get some value there. We pick up 1 kill, and now I can get some chance. I get to have a stack there, right? It's the 9 minute 10 mark, and unfortunately, in my case here, my Blissey's died, but this buff is already up. Now, you got to notice this, especially if you're playing solo queue, is that your teammates might take these Baltoys. And if they take those Baltoys, that's totally fine, because it's not necessarily a part of the rotational kind of situation that you're going for. Okay, so as you can see, we rotate through. It's about the 8-minute 50 mark, and we are now in the bottom lane. A little bit late, probably could have done that a second earlier, but we end up getting the big B, and then we're doing a lot of damage to the enemy bottom laners. We end up getting a kill, and we're able to get our 10 points score in here. Now, I'm going to pause and have a look at the level that I'm currently sitting at. I am sitting at a very healthy level 6 by the 8-minute 36 mark. So these 2 bits of farm generally still should be up. And if we're ahead on levels, what that means is that we've taken more resources in both the top and in the bottom lane in order to be ahead at that particular level, which means that the enemy inherently has had less resources. That's a very, very good trade-off, right? Now I try and get some money to stack, but that doesn't quite happen. So I'm just going to quickly try and take this 6 here because I know there is a blue buff for me to take into the top lane. Right, so as you can see, I'm trying to make sure that our team takes the resources off the enemy, but I didn't necessarily want to take that Indeedee off our team, you know, but it is what it is. So I rotate through. I'm going to take this red buff here, and I'm going to go into the central area, right? So this is pretty much exactly how we've talked about how this rotation is going to work out here, right? So we take our red buff, and notice at this particular stage in the game, this buff is not going to be up until after we clear this central area stuff out. So this is essentially optimizing the rotations of your buffs and when they spawn with respect to getting the maximal value in your lane, right? So we can see that that blue buff is going to spawn just after we take these Bs, because we took it a little bit after the 9-minute mark. And yeah, I have to use my flash to get out, but you can see we're still on track with our levels, and we end up taking blue buff, and we have got our level 8, right? So we've got our level 8 by the 7 minutes 40. This has been a successful case of ganking the top and the bottom lane. Could have it been more optimized? Yes. Could have my micro interactions been a little bit better? They absolutely could have, especially that ult could have been a little bit better. However, we get the general picture of what's going on. These first 3 minutes, yes, there are of course players who could have played this micro a little bit better than I have, or potentially a lot better, but the general macro awareness of taking buff and taking buff, even though I have honestly played some of this suboptimally, we've still gotten a lot of value as a team. Let's have a look at another example. So in this particular gameplay, I am playing a level 4 power spike, but it's going to be Sylveon in my case instead of the last game was Leafeon, right? The same idea, we've got a Pokemon with a level 4 power spike, and you're going to happen the exact same thing happens here. We wait till 9 minutes 45. We secure that, and then we go and take this guy here, and we're going to rotate straight through into that top lane from there, right? Now, of course, micro, come on, stop getting diffed here, but this is exactly what happens, right? Notice the pathing is very similar, and it's because I'm panning over my map, right? I want to get to this spot as quickly as possible. It's faster for me to go this route than go that route, right? It's a little bit quicker for me. So that's the route that I opt to take in order to dive on these guys as quickly as I possibly can. So we run, and I can see that, yes, they've got EVs. We want to keep them as EVs for as long as possible rather than letting them get their evolutions, and know when to score and when to keep attacking, right? So if you've got no score and they're fairly close to being dead, we can continue to attack here. This EV, he's going to go down. They've run out of berries, so we do end up getting a lot of value here. Now, I'm going to pause at this particular point because, as you can see, I was aware of what was happening on the map. Our little Metane thing, whatever the little mini Metagross guy, he's taken our blue buff. That's totally fine, right? Look at the time. He's going to be there in time for bees to get to this bottom lane. Now, what that's kind of going to indicate to me is I've got 2 options. I can run down here through the middle of the map, take those citrus berries, and try and equalize a 3v3, because at this stage, it's probably fairly safe to say the jungler is not coming top because of the time, and he's still not here, and we're kind of just diving on their base. If their jungler was around, he would be trying to stop us getting scores or potentially get a KO on our Mamoswine. So with that in mind, we know that their jungler is going to be going to the bottom lane, and you need to make up your mind. There's all this farm that you can get with your team here, or you can run down to the bottom lane. In this particular game, I think it's a little bit safer to make sure that we win in our top lane. And you can see I kind of go back as if I'm going to run down, but you know, it's still just 10 seconds till the bees. I could have made it into the bottom lane, but yeah, that's totally fine. And so we're just trying to clear this farm as quickly as we possibly can and maintain our lead in the top lane, right? There's another good reason as to why I've decided to stay in the top lane. Our me tank having the blue buff, or the little mini Metagross guy having the blue buff, he should have a little bit of additional experience to be able to hold against this pad, as well as having those cooldown reductions, which is really nice, right? Given the state of my levels, right, I'm level 5, and when I get level 6, which is probably what should happen if we secure some of this farm up here and score in their pad, right, that means I've got Drain and Kiss. There is no one on this enemy team who I'm concerned about if I then walk into their jungle and decide to take their buffs. Right? There's no one on their team who I'm not confident that I can't 1v1 in the early game with an Eevee. So because these Eevees are very, very strong early. So that's exactly what we opt to do here, right? I'm frontlining for the team because we've got that potion. We're trying to bully the enemies away as quickly as we can. Know when to score rather than when to continue fighting. That's a Sylveon with Mystical Fire. I'm not going to be able to kill him. So that is exactly what I do. And notice, I'm going to pause here for a minute. Notice that I run into the central area through this way, right? Why do we think I'm running through like that? The reason why I'm running through like that, not directly into here, is because after you score, you've been on the enemy goal zone, they have got about a second on their minimap that they can see the direction that you're running in. So if they see you running directly in here, they know that you're going to be invading. So if you make your sweep around here, right? A, it means that the enemy isn't going to see you running in, but B, their jungler could potentially come up through this way and you're going to have vision on him to be able to take a fight in the middle that you probably can be winning if you're Sylveon early. So that's exactly why I've done that, right? And you can notice in this game, I'm actually pinging for our team to take this jungle, right? Because I know that I'm going to take their jungle and I'm totally fine with that, right? So I'm a big believer in taking the buffs. However, unfortunately, the enemy jungler has decided to do a buff Baltoy buff rotation, which just means that, you know, I kind of wasted a little bit of time rather than taking that buff straight away, right? So we've taken the enemy's buffs off them, and then notice how our buffs are still up for grabs, right? Even though I pinged my team to go and take it, right? Because that's free experience. And what you want to be careful for is if you're invading the enemy team, you don't want them to then just counter invade you, because it's like a bit of an even trade, right? Now, I do get to this middle area a little bit late as a result, but I'm a level 7.5 Sylveon, and I'm very, very confident that I can pretty much take on anything at this point. So the Zero Aura goes back, he sees his jungle not there, and at this point I can take one buff and I'm going to be level 8. Very, very similar to how that Leafeon game played out, right? After we get that blue buff and then head back to a lane, we've got our level 8 Unite moves for a big fight that can happen at the 7-minute 20B. So hopefully you're seeing the value of being able to gank the top and the bottom lane, or doing these more complex rotations when you're using an attacker, right? This isn't a new idea. This idea has been around for years playing this game, right? It's called a one buff gank, by the way, where you take one buff and then you gank a lane. So let's have a look at how the pros do this. This is Luminosity against Nemesis. These are two teams in NA who are arguably like the best teams in the world, right? So we're going to see how they do these complex rotations. As you can see, there is a Leafeon here, and the Leafeon wants to support their Magikarp in lane. So I can guarantee you this Leafeon is going to do that same one buff gank to get into the top lane. There are a couple of options of what the Chandelure might do. The Chandelure might take the blue buff and head to the top lane, or the Leafeon might rotate down and do a 3v2 push in the bottom lane. However, I'd say it's probably more likely to have more members in the top lane than the bottom lane, because you want your scalers to get online as quickly as possible. Okay, so not exactly how I thought it was going to play out here. What we have is we've actually got the Chandelure and his defender player taking that farm as soon as it spawns, and that might be for a potential counter invade if they know that this blue buff is still sitting up and their team can communicate that, because they say, hey, Leafeon only has red buff and there's no blue buff on the enemy team, so the enemy jungler can then just walk in and take the blue buff away, right? So that's actually a very, very smart play from Nemesis. So we see this one buff gank happening here. The Leafeon tries to get some maximal value, but of course, you know, yeah, Blastoise and Eldegoss just having, yeah, very, very good level of awareness not to get too caught out. Okay, now I just want to point this out. This is a fairly complex rotation here. We can see that the enemy attacker in the bottom lane is heading top lane to try and get as much value as they possibly can in that top lane, essentially doing a bit of a 4v3 up there, right? Meanwhile, these two stay in the bottom. You'd imagine they might try and push, knowing that this Sylveon has gone missing. However, they've got no vision on the Sylveon. So let's see how these complex rotations play out for the attackers. Yeah, so it's a 4v1. They're able to kill the Magikarp, and yeah, they're just putting a lot of pressure on the top lane. Yeah, this is where complex rotations can come in very, very valuable, right? They're pushing, there's no berries, they're able to get their micro scores in, and yeah, they're just taking all the farm away. There we go. The Leafeon goes down, 23 score in for the Sylveon. Okay, and then now at this particular stage in the match, this is where you're going to get a lot of value in terms of having those good complex rotations, because we've rotated up there, gotten value there. Our next rotation is going to be into the enemy jungle, right? Because you have done very, very good to suffocate them. You want to further suffocate them as much as you possibly can. However, let's not be forgetting on the bottom side here, they're not losing necessarily overall. They've actually done a very, very successful bottom lane by keeping this attacker down. That's on the side of Nemesis, and their Chandelure is actually level 6. That's pretty good, right? It would be terrible if he managed to secure the farm against 1-2, right? That would be best case for these guys, and they would be steamrolling ahead. So now the trade-off is they've got 2 who are doing better than 1, right? But now these guys here, they're doing a lot better, right? These 3 here, plus their top laner, they're able to get a lot of value and really suffocate the experience away from the top laner and the jungler. So let's see how this invade turns out. Yeah, it's a 3-person invade, and they're focusing on just taking the farm away and then moving out, right? Okay, well, they kill the Blissey because the Blissey's low. The Blastoise is just taking all the farm in the top lane. Yeah, so you can see the value of having these complex rotations. It's very, very strong, right? Yeah, trying not to overextend there, but that's a very, very good response from Nemesis. Taking the value in the bottom lane and then coming up from the bottom lane and taking all the middle farm, right? So yeah, look, good turnaround. Oh, great eject button. But yeah, he's going to get... Oh, no, he gets away. Very good job. Okay, as you can see at the top level, these rotations are a little bit different because they are in a coordinated 5-stack, but you can kind of do an altered version of exactly what we've talked about in your solo queue lobbies. Guys, if you got some value out of this video, make sure you drop a like. And if you've stuck around to the end, there's going to be 1 or 2 videos up on the screen, another guide, another gameplay. Guys, click on it, learn a little bit more about Pokemon Unite, and of course, jump on the ladder, grind some ELO, and have fun